Our loving God, this morning we come to you on this beautiful spring day, and we thank you for that. We pray that you'll be with us as we study your word, that we will leave here better than we came, that we will be drawn closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Has anyone ever saved you from something? I mean, actually saved you from something? From dying? From an accident? From making a career mistake? Making a marital mistake? Does anything come to mind that some special person stepped in? Bob?
I was in a pretty bad accident when I was a freshman in academy, and it killed 3 other students, and I was on my way out. And the doctor, this back in the dark ages, the doctor gave me a transfusion of his own blood to save me.
Wow. Obviously it worked.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Closest I ever became to be a doctor.
I know that, John Cosgrove is not here today, but he was telling a story about how he was flying a single engine plane and, he hit trees or cut down wires or something and landed upside down. I don't know what it was. And it was a horrible but lucky crash. And the guy was telling it to, said, "Well, did you survive?" But, well, you were lucky. When my ankle once at college, I don't know if this doesn't really fit in, but talking about doctors, and I never had a sprain or broken thing. So my buddies carried me to the local physician here back in those days, and I'm on the table and in a lot of pain, and he comes running and he says, "Whoa, that was close. I almost sterilized you." Medicine has come a long way. You ever gone to someone seeking something that you really needed some answers? Really? You were really struggling and you needed somebody to help you with something, to talk to. This week I met with a young man who called me a few days before, and he was under a lot of pressure. And when I met with him, I just didn't feel like I was connecting. And the sad part is, when the meeting ending, he was still going around in circles, I felt. I don't think I helped him at all. But I know this, he was really needing some answers, really. And I don't think I helped him a lot. In our lesson today, Doug, which was a great lesson, I don't know if you read it or not, but on our lesson this week, Doug asked us, have you ever seen the bumper sticker, "Jesus saves"? Jesus saves. Most of the bumper stickers I see in college, they were about the Sabbath. But the ones that you see out on the road will say, "Jesus saves."
That's strange.
Saves us from what? What are they really talking about? Jesus saves, or Jesus is the answer. Well, what's the question? Jesus saves from what? Jesus is the answer. But what is the question? In our Christian journey, we have read and reread Bible stories. We love stories. Jesus was at his greatest in teaching when he told stories. Has there ever been an occasion that you were shown things in that story that you'd never noticed in the Bible? I'm talking about the Bible stories. Things that have escaped you for years, things that might have been hiding in plain sight. Anything come to mind that you sort of had an aha moment?
This week, so in Genesis,
when the flood comes, the bird comes back with the olive branch in its mouth. We were talking about this in Bible study last week with another group that I'm in, and it was like we just skipped over it. There was no like. I wanted to ask why the olive branch? Like that's a very random branch. But later on in the New Testament, like Christians are referenced as like being grafted onto an olive tree when you come with Christ and leave your former religion. So the bird was bringing an olive branch, which symbolized the grafting later on that Jesus would do to bring us into the kingdom.
Well,
Good stuff.
somebody else say anything? Sorry. Anyone else? You just sort of noticed something in a story that you've reread since you were a kid or been told that story? For me, it was the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well. And it's what's so strange about what I missed, it's the first word or two in the story. Jesus had to go to Samaria. Jesus did not have to go to Samaria. Samaria was the last place a Jew wanted to go. The Samaritans hated the Jews, and it was dangerous. But I'd never noticed that until Doug pointed out Jesus had to go to Samaria. These stories are so rich that they last a lifetime. We keep learning from them. Things that are hiding in plain sight. And no matter what story we read in the Bible, in some way, it is all about Jesus and salvation. This class is called The Life of Jesus. We haven't really been in the Gospels for a year or two, but every class is about Jesus. That's the whole point, and salvation. Every story that we have in the Bible is connected to salvation in some way or another. We, for some weeks now, have been studying the book of Genesis, and it's a long, great book. And today we're going to talk about the last story in Jesus. I'm going to do a quick review for you. I don't know how you review Genesis in 5 minutes, but we're going to saddle up for a quick ride here, okay? The book of Genesis is about God providing a home for his people. It starts with a home in Eden and ends with a home in Egypt. At the end of Genesis, Joseph will tell his brothers that it's okay. We're in a good place as a family because God saw how to use this very sad story that we're going to study to save his people. Joseph didn't understand the journey he was taking. His brothers didn't understand the journey they were taking. And as some of us are finishing our journey, there are things that we didn't understand until just recently. And maybe we see how God saved us from time to time. These students that are here today, who I love, the young people that are here, do you know why I think we connect? Why they keep coming to my lectures or my luncheons? It's because of my journey. That's all it is. I'm not the brightest guy in the room. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. It's all about my story. And through some miracle that God provides, they connect with my story and my journey. Things that went wrong and what God did to save me, to help me. At times during my journey, I wasn't really sure if it was the plan that would get me home. I was simply going on faith. Faith that my Heavenly Father would lead me to a safe place. I didn't really know where I was going. I just was on a journey. Everyone is on a journey today. And the story of these journeys can be very compelling to other people at times. Why would this be the first thing that Pharaoh asked Jacob in this story? Joseph introduces his dad to Pharaoh. And the first thing that Pharaoh says is, "How old are you?" But what he really is saying is, "Tell me about yourself. I want to hear your story." Jacob says, "My journey has been 130 years, and it's a long story." But he says, "It's not as long as the story of my father or my grandfather." Our stories do matter to certain people. And today we're going to study about a young man in one of the most incredible journeys that I have ever read. Our lesson is titled, Joseph and Jesus Saves. Saves us from hunger, sin, and a lot more things. But let's review some background before Joseph's story gets going here. And this, I'll try to make sense in a few minutes of time. In Genesis 12, 1 through 3, Abraham is told to leave his country and his father's household and go to a new land that God will show him. God says, "I'll make you into a great nation, and I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make your name great, and you will be a blessing." In Genesis 15, 18, God makes a covenant with Abraham. And a few weeks ago, we discussed what a covenant was. It's a promise. In real estate business, like I'm in, a covenant is put on your deeds of trust and on your deeds, your warranty deeds, and it tells you what you can and can't do. God is making a promise to this man, and he is the only one that can take that covenant away. It's on the books. It stays there forever, unless the guy that puts it on takes it off. And this covenant with Abraham is a written form of protection that can't be changed. God also makes a covenant with Jacob and has a new land to move to and occupy. The same covenant God had made with his grandfather Abraham and his father Isaac. He now makes this same covenant with Jacob. Jacob is on the run from his brother Esau for stealing his inheritance and spends the night in this place called Bethel. He has a dream, and in that dream he sees a staircase. At the top he sees God, and Jacob is promised the land where he's standing, and his descendants will be like the dust of the earth. Same thing he told his father and grandfather. Imagine you've never heard this story, the story of Joseph. He is the son of Rachel, which is Jacob's favorite wife, and Joseph's brothers are the sons of other wives. The brothers know that Joseph is treated as the favorite child, and they come to the point that they hate him. Rachel will have another son, and he's Benjamin. The resentment by their brothers reaches a dangerous state, and they decide to kill their brother Joseph. But one of the big brothers says, "No, let's don't kill him. We'll just sell him to this caravan of our cousins, the Ishmaelites. We'll just get rid of him that way." Please note that Judah seems to be the brains of the outfit here at this point. Then, to cover their sin, they create this horrendous lie and tell their dad that Joseph, the favorite son, has been killed by a wild animal. Jacob then goes into a deep depression that affects him the rest of his life. Joseph is then bought in Egypt by a man named Potiphar. He's kind of a big shot, medium, but he's better than the average guy. God blesses Joseph, and Potiphar is so impressed he makes him head of his household. Then Potiphar's wife tries to have an affair with Joseph. He resents, and the wife, after being rebuffed, lies to Potiphar, her husband, and says Joseph tried to have sex with her. So Potiphar throws him in the slammer. Now he's in prison. In prison, he also flourishes and has a vision. It is that vision that eventually gets him out of prison. Then Pharaoh has two dreams, and Pharaoh is very troubled about the dreams, and he demands an explanation from his wise men. And they can't come through with the right answer. So Pharaoh is very upset. Joseph now has been in prison 2 years. Pharaoh is told that Joseph can interpret dreams, and so Joseph is sent for. Joseph tells Pharaoh that he can't interpret dreams. He cannot, but his God can. Joseph has shown the meaning of the dreams and explains to Pharaoh that a 7-year famine is coming. But for 7 years, things are going to be great. We're going to have bountiful crops. So you can store up enough grain to get through the famine. Joseph is then rewarded and is made the number 2 man in Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. Joseph stores up so much grain that they can't count it. And we were told there is so much that it's like the sand of the sea. That term keeps coming up through the story of Jesus. Your offsprings will be like the sand of the sea. The famine comes, and the world's in trouble. Jacob now, living in Canaan, sends his sons to Egypt to buy grain because he sees the food supplies depleting and rapidly. When they arrive, Joseph sees his brothers, but they don't recognize him. Then Joseph, on 2 occasions, tests his brothers to see if they've changed or to find out if they're still untrustworthy. He also wants to know if they've killed Benjamin, his little brother, or maybe they've sold him as a slave. This is really on his mind. Joseph holds one brother back as prisoners and sends the rest back and tells him to bring back their brother Benjamin to see him. This other brother is held hostage. When the brothers return to their home, to their dad, Jacob, and tell him that Benjamin has to be brought to Egypt or the other brother will not be released, this puts tremendous stress on the dad. And Jacob is now beginning to go back into the same mindset as to what has happened with Joseph. He tells him, I will lay my gray head down to die if anything happens to my son, Benjamin. Pressure. But then this amazing thing happens. Judah, the brains of the outfit, says, I will guarantee my little brother's safety with my own life. I'll give my life if anything happens to him. You kind of see where this story is going? Somebody is giving their life to save someone else. Now, pretending you've heard this story for the first time, what do you think this story is about? It's a broad question, but what hits you most about what this story is about? Where is this story leading us? Come on.
God is a God of redos.
God is a God of
Do-over.
redo. So we can start over after we mess up. Let's go a bit deeper into the story. Maybe the answers will be a lot clearer. Joseph then reveals himself to the brothers. Joseph then sends for his father, and Jacob agrees to come to Egypt. He finally sees Joseph. Jacob has been thinking that his son has been dead for 22 years. 22 years your son has been dead. And all of a sudden, you get the news, no, he's still alive. And boy, is he alive. Joseph is now 39 years old and was sold into slavery when he was 17. Think about that. Some of these young people here, just a couple of years ago, were 17 years old, sold into slavery. So let's read Genesis 50, 15 through 21. 50, 15 through 21. Senator, do you have that? Okay, I'm gonna get it. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead and said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father has left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. Just a point here, they're not lying. Jacob probably said this in the presence of Joseph. When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Jacob's now dead. He's passed away. How would you describe Joseph's brothers? At the point their father closed his eyes, what was going on in their mind? What was going through their psyche?
Possible retaliation.
They had a lot of fear. When Joseph responds to his brothers, what does this tell you about Joseph? Kind of little brother that you'd like to have after you've done a terrible thing to him? What does it tell you about their family dynamics now? When we compare Joseph's spiritual maturity to other biblical heroes, he's really got to be at the top. Now let's talk about something I've never heard talked about before. We don't know about Joseph's personal life, feelings after he came into power. Nothing said about what was going on really day to day about him personally. Do you think he was happy in Egypt with all the power and the wealth he possessed? It's not a trick question. Do you think he was fairly content? Yes.
He probably felt that God led him there and he was there for a purpose, not so much that it was a vacation, but as much as he felt as though it was a purposeful position he was in.
No. I know there was a
Grateful.
lot to do every day. Got to build a lot of storage facilities.
He didn't just build the storage facilities, he ended up with the property and stuff all in the, belonged to the Pharaoh when all this was done. The Pharaoh owned everything then.
Thought that was an interesting story. As the famine increases, people buying grain run out of money in Egypt. So I'm not going to say that Joseph was a good Jewish businessman. I'm not going to say he was bad. But he slowly obtains every square inch of Egypt for the Pharaoh, for his boss. Now, do you think that's going to get you in a bad position with your employer? You're already number two, and you just keep keeping the bank stuffed with money, and more money's coming in. And when they run out of money, he takes their cattle, they sell that. And so when that runs out, all they've got left is their land. They turn that over to him. He makes farmers out of them. Now they're servants. They're doing what they have to do to stay alive. He was busy. And he was doing a darn good job. Yeah, John?
That story, just recently I reflected on that, heard us talk about that. That was a cataclysmic change in the entire society. All the people before Joseph were independent. After, they were all slaves or servants of Pharaoh. His power was great. They were now subject in a very different way than they had been before the famine. The world changed for them. And, you know, whether Pharaoh was happy that he owned everything now is one thing, but the people, other than being grateful that they, you know, got food,
Yeah.
they'd given up everything, and now they were slaves. And the society had completely changed.
I mean, it had to be dramatic when you think about where we were 20 years ago and look where we are now, or 15 or 7 years ago where we are now. The world shifted. Yes, Wendy.
Oh, good lesson, by the way. Going off of what John said, well, a couple of things. First of all, how the brothers must have felt that their buffer was gone. That's their father. And there's a seriousness. I'm looking at the full spiritual picture of when we actually are face to face with God, and there is no buffer. You know, there's no awkwardness, weird there. And when Joseph's taking their things, it's almost as if God is coming down into the earth and taking back what was rightfully his. And I don't see it as much as being a slave to Joseph or a slave to God. I see it as utter dependence now on a God figure.
Yeah. I mean, you know, all this makes sense. People come and say, so this is your home? This is where you've always lived? Well, we've always lived here, but it's not our home anymore.
Ken,
It is our home, we just don't own it anymore.
Ken,
Yes.
would that be an analogy to Matthew being a tax collector and all the Jews were having to sell everything they owned to pay the Romans? And Matthew was hated.
Yeah, in a way it is. It is. For the tax collectors, I don't know if you've watched The Chosen very much, but we already knew they were they were received differently by the Jewish people. But a tax collector, man, that was about as low or as high as you could get. Financially, it was high. As far as Jewish morality, that was low. So yeah, there is a analogy there that we have to think about. But at the end of the day, after a long day in their office there, riding around, did he really have a contented life? Was he happy living in Egypt with everything they'd ever dreamed of at his fingertips? He could have any woman in Egypt he wanted. Any woman. At the snap of his fingers. He could have all the money he wanted. Not a problem. Finest clothes, and all the Egyptian horses that he wanted. Egypt was renowned for its horses. We don't read that he made any attempt in those 23 years or 22 years to get back in touch with his family. So you would think he's pretty happy.
Send them a text message, but they didn't respond.
Yeah.
He tried email too, it just wasn't working.
I mean, Dana's not that far away, so I always thought, well, he must be pretty happy there. But Stanley Stevenson sent me a sermon this week that changed my whole perspective on just what was going on with Joseph during this time. With all of his power and everything revolved around Joseph. It bothered me that he never got back with his family. Yeah.
It strikes me that as we look at it, he really longed deeply for his brother and his father. It was deeply there. Why he didn't go back, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there is evidence of a deep loss that he needed to resolve.
I didn't get into it when we reviewed the story about when Joseph really saw his father come in and ran up to him and wept like a baby and sobbed. I didn't get into that part of the story. So I would assume there's some long days, some lonely days. But he's young. He's in his 20s. Yeah.
Another couple of things. I think that when a relationship and family is broken, the person that breaks it has to be the one to fix it. And the brothers were the ones that broke it. So there really wasn't anything he could do to fix that situation. And the other thing is, he's developed a kind of contentment living there, and you can see that by what he names his children. You know, I'm here and I've forgotten my past and now I'm settled. And that's pretty profound, and in working through the trauma that he's just gone through is deciding this is where I'm planted, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away the sharpness of it, but it,
Go on.
He also may not have been free. He was bought as a slave, and he may never have, even though he rose into these positions of power, he was still a slave. He was still bought. And so he may not have had the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, it gives you a lot to think about. The story is so deep, so rich. I appreciate your thoughts.
This whole story is about God uses the vicissitudes of life to perfect the character of humans.
There you go.
And the reason why Joseph rose higher and higher is because he became more and more like God. And people just looked at him and knew, I can trust you.
Yeah. We don't see where there was any dishonesty in all those transactions. You think about the multitudes, the hundreds of thousands of people coming through to buy grain every day. He was above board. He was ethical. But I also believe he was lonely. Very lonely at times. How is Joseph enduring this new life? When he was 17, he was ridden into Egypt, into this city, and the women were wearing either no top or sheer tops. He'd never seen anything like this. The makeup, the mascara, and they had it. You can look it up. How does this kid, what is he thinking when he sees all these things, a strange place? Here I am, a slave now, and these are the strangest people I've ever seen in my life, and they're powerful. They're dangerous to me. This is a new society. It's something he was trying to process when he first saw it.
Genesis 36.
I feel at times he was very homesick for the land of Canaan. He probably felt incredibly lonely and isolated. But this is how it was made clear to me how he felt about where he was staying. Joseph marries this woman. She's a pagan. Here's this guy living on faith every day of his life. He's married to a pagan. And guess what his father-in-law is? He's a pagan priest. So how does that work out weekends when they're coming over to visit the grandkids? It's time to say the blessing. Or what kind of Bible stories or what kind of bedtime stories are you telling to my two grandsons these days, Joseph?
I suspect as a head of state, which Joseph was like vice president, their ability to just
travel willy-nilly is probably very restricted and
Yeah.
discouraged, because kingdoms with their leadership, if they knew, oh, Joseph is going to be traveling abroad, this is an opportunity to write off,
Take him out.
or kidnap for ransom. And how many soldiers would have to accompany Joseph so that he could go visit his dad? And even then, what, 1,000? How many would it take for the rest of the known world to say, I think we better leave them alone. They've got too much protection going on. Otherwise, that's what the castle was for. It was to protect the king from being assassinated.
I'd never thought about the security aspects of this guy, or where it would lead to. But to talk about how he really felt, he has his first son. His name is Manasseh. And what Manasseh means is, I no longer hate. This son helps me to forget my troubles. It's been a hard, emotional journey, and I've let my past go. I'm over it finally. I'm done. Let it go. Have you ever really hated somebody? You don't have to raise your hand. Really ever hated somebody or resented the heck out of them? You didn't want to be around them. You didn't want to stay away. I have. Two guys, I hated them. I hated them. And I'll tell you this story about what changed me. I was dropping my son off at my college school 20-something or 30-something years ago. The years are getting by so fast. And I wanted a cup of coffee. I wanted a donut. You know, I still had a 33-inch waistline and all that. I didn't care. I'd eat what I want, do what I want. So I whip in there for a cup of coffee. And these two guys that I hated were Indians. I mean, I hated them. And the guy that owned Dunkin' Donuts was an Indian. And I thought, what have I got to do to get away from these guys? What does it take? And so every morning I'd go in, and I'd notice these little kids come in from Brainerd Baptist. There's a school over there that's real good, elementary school. And the soccer mom would come in and she'd unload the little girls, and they'd come running into Dunkin' Donuts and say, Roger, I'm here. These little blonde-headed girls. And here would come Roger out, the owner, and give them their donut and their milk. Give it to them. I kept noticing him. And I never said a word. And finally, one day, he came up to me and he said, are you Ken DeFoor? And I said, I am. He said, would you mind if I ask you a question? I said, sure, go ahead. And he said, my building I rent here, I noticed the building was going to heck and back, gutters falling off, the parking lot was dirty. Of course, I noticed that. My brother and me are anal retentive about those things. So it was just disarray. So he says, I can't get my landlord to do anything. And I said, well, you have a lease? And he brought it. I said, well, bring it and we'll read it tomorrow. And we'll see what you can do or you can't. So I did. And the place got cleaned up and all. I told him what to do, and he was thanking me. And he came to me and he said, Ken, I can't thank you enough for helping me. Things are going a lot better now. And I said, Roger, let me tell you something. The best thing I've ever done in my life is coming here, because I hated you. I mean, I hated you. I resented you when I walked through the door. But I've seen the way you treat people. And I've seen the way you handle yourself and how honest you are. And it was one of the best things that's ever happened. He said, well, why did you hate me? I said, because two guys with your same name have tried to destroy me for years. And through the grace of God, I overcame it. He said, well, who are they? And he told me, he said, oh my gosh. Those same two guys came to my dad. We owned the Dunkin' Donuts in Cleveland. My dad was ready to retire until he invested with him. He will have to work now till he draws his last breath. I thought, Roger, I am so sorry about the way I used to feel. Really am. So I get it about Manasseh. I'm over it. I'm finally over it. And I found out something else about hating people. You're the only guy suffering. They don't really care. They're just fine. Care if you hate them. They just go run about with their life. You haven't changed anything by hating them. They just carry on, and you suffer, and go home and think about them. They don't think about you. They're off to somebody else to be evicted. Let it go. I'm finally over it. Joseph's second son, and this is the eye opener, was Ephraim. It means, this is not my land. That's what Ephraim means. This is not my home. I have a covenant future home. Joseph is trying to be a covenant man in a pagan empire. Joseph is being used by God because he's walking in holy faith. And the big question this morning is, how do you get holy faith? This is what helped me. This is a train. Can you see that? 3 cars. First car are facts. The second car is faith. And the third car is feeling. This is how you obtain faith and keep it. Well, you can't have faith in something unless it's true. Well, those are facts. These are facts. Now, some people will say, well, it kind of changes from one book. One gospel says this, one gospel says that. There were 2 lepers, and one says there was 1 leper. That's not the point. These are facts. And they haven't changed thousands of years. The next car is faith. You get your faith because this is true. If I'm trying to get someone to come to work for me, and I'm told they're good, honest people, I have faith in them. But I've gotten the facts first. You're not going to work for me unless I have some facts about you. Then I can get some faith in you. Then, after you get the faith, you get to feeling really good about this. The caboose is the feeling. You've got the engine, you've got the middle car, and you have the caboose. You cannot have true faith without facts to back it up. The result of faith is a feeling you get with this assurance. I'm not going to worry about it. I have a good feeling about this. I have assurance. But if you get your feeling in front of the facts, then you're going to have a train wreck. We as a people, and I'm not going to get on my platform about this, I owe everything to my church. Everything. If I had not come back into the church, I would have never met Judy. If I had never come back into the church, I would never have met Ellsworth McKee. If I'd never come back into the church, I wouldn't have what success I had in my business. I've made that very clear for the last 30 years. I owe everything to the church and to Jesus. But some of us get our feelings in front of the facts. And the facts are, we don't know when Jesus is coming back. Fact is, we're just supposed to try to get ready every day. And if we get into a position that we try to say every world event is the mark of the beast, we get our feelings in front of the engine and we have a train wreck. COVID was the mark of the beast. The Great Recession in 2009 was the mark of the beast. When I was a young man, the Arab oil embargo and Nixon closing service stations on Sunday was then the mark of the beast. My older friends have told me that Franklin Roosevelt was the mark of the beast. He wasn't. He was a great man. Ronald Wilson Reagan, my political hero, was thought to be possibly the mark of the beast because when you use certain letters and the number of those letters in his name, Ronald Wilson Reagan, it comes up to 666. Why don't we just let that have a rest? Don't get these train cars out of order. They can be powerful. They can take us on our journey. That's how you get holy faith. You can't develop faith by focusing on the future. I mean, we all want to get somewhere good in the future. We do. We're living for the future. You develop by faith by how God has led you in the past. Or your grandparents tell you how God has led them in the past, and you get faith. I see what happened to my dad. I believe him. I have faith in what he says, or my uncle, or my teacher, or my professor, or my coworker. It's true. It's a fact. When we believe about the future, what we believe about the future is a promise. The promise is that he's coming back to take us to heaven. This is based on facts. Right here. It's full of facts. Jesus is coming back. Revelation is not about the future. It is about who holds the future. It took a long time for me to figure that out. But Joseph is trying to save the world. Another point, I'll come to it. Joseph is trying to save the world. He's doing the best he can with what he has. God has showed him that he has 7 years to get this in order, to save Egypt. I also looked up that this famine at that time was, we won't call it worldwide, but it wasn't just in this arid Middle East. It was in Greece, where Greece is now. It was in Rome. It was trying to stretch to Britain at that time. It was a bad, bad, bad famine. I don't know about China and the Far East because the scholars don't know about China. They do, but I couldn't Google it and find out. So I don't have all the facts. You can't put your faith in what I've just told you because I don't have all the facts. But we know that it was more than just the Middle East. And starvation was a danger. Countries have been invaded because of starvation. Citizens or civilizations have been destroyed because of starvation. So Joseph, in God's plan, is saving the world. He has 7 years to do it. Joseph is not saying, boy, if my brothers could just see me now. Joseph is wanting to go to the promised land. But Joseph was given and has given all that up because he has to save a nation. And he has to save, and this is the important part, he also has to save those who are not like him, those that don't believe like he does, those that hate him because of who he is. Does that sound familiar? People hating you because you're trying to save them. This is exactly what Jesus was trying to do when he came here. And just for instance now, what Gentiles or people that were not like Jews, they were non-Jewish people, what comes to mind in all these stories on Jesus' journey here, 3-year journey, who did he help? What stories comes to your mind Who did he feed or who did he help? Think about those stories. Name me one.
Feeding of 4,000.
Sorry?
John Lindquist.
Yeah, John.
Feeding of the 4,000 in Decapolis. That was,
the first thing that came to my mind.
yeah.
4,000. Who else?
Phoenician woman,
I'm sorry?
a Phoenician woman.
Yes, he did. How about the demonic man? I love that story. Crazy guy running around in the cemeteries at night. He's a Samaritan. He's a Gentile. Canaanite woman, the demon-possessed daughter. Did somebody say the Roman centurion? Jesus said the Roman centurion, he had a paralyzed servant. And he's the guy that says, I know you can heal him because you're in charge. I'm a man who sins and people go. I call them, they come. I understand a little bit about how you operate, but you're so much more than I am, and I know that you can save my servant. And Jesus says he has the greatest faith in Israel. You think about all the Jews in Israel. And here is a Gentile that Jesus says has the greatest faith he's ever seen. The woman at the well.
Reminds me of Ruth as well. Ruth, the story of Ruth.
Oh, boy, there's a great one. There's another foreigner that's starving. By the way, about that story, we learned from Doug years ago. Her mother-in-law and her father-in-law leave Bethlehem because they're having a famine. And you know what Bethlehem means? City of bread. And you're living in the city of bread and you're starving. Interesting. These are things that, like when I started out before, have you read these stories and suddenly after all those years you learn something that you never knew? Bethlehem means city of bread and people are leaving it because they're starving. It's amazing. Zacchaeus, I don't know if apparently he was Jewish, but he'd given all that up. Jesus said to this horrible man that people hated, today salvation has come to this house. This whole lesson about Joseph is about salvation. Joseph is showing us what salvation is all about. And he's showing it to his brothers, and especially Judah, who betrayed him and sold him into slavery. But here's the ironic thing about this story. This is what really surprised me that I hadn't noticed before. I had noticed it, I just wasn't thinking. Judah had to be saved. Now, why? Somebody answer this. Why did Judah have to be saved?
Jesus was promised to come from the tribe of Judah, and his genealogy had to proceed.
All this is moving. The train is moving in the right direction here. Judah, his seed would affect David, and Jesus came from the tribe of Judah. It's an amazing story. But what is even more amazing is Joseph didn't understand this at the time. But Judah, who offered up his life to save his brother, began to understand it, I think, at the end. Genesis is a praise story. It praises our Heavenly Father who gave us faith. We have seen people come to church that we never thought we would see darken the door. And I'm one of them. We've seen people give up everything to help others to be of service. We have seen businesses flourish because of faith-filled owner. We've seen people live that should have died years ago because of faith. We've seen people healed that should be disabled, and I'm one of them. And I'll tell you why I relate to the people that Jesus was trying to talk to 2,000 years ago when he would do something tremendous for them. And they would say, well, if you're really that great, show us a miracle. Well, get this now. Jerry Arnold has a Bible study over at my house every Friday morning and has for years. I won't tell you how it started, but it's still going on. And he was talking about Jesus healing people. And I said, well, Jerry, I tell you the problem, a lot of people, you know, they hear these stories over and over again, but they don't mean a lot to them. Have you actually ever healed someone? He said, yes, you. And I had forgotten. This is why I relate to the crowd Jesus was dealing with. I had forgotten that I could hardly walk for a long time. I couldn't come to church hardly. The pain was so great. Jerry Arnold had a little thing of oil on his keychain, and he put some on me and prayed for me, and a few days later, I'm up and away. Now, how could I forget that? How is it possible for me to have forgotten that and still standing straight up here today? I relate to those stories. I relate to why people lose their faith. They forget. We've eventually seen how God has helped us in our journey. Everything in Genesis is true, but it's a metaphor for us. Do you understand or feel that Genesis is a metaphor for your life? We're not sure of what's going on until after the facts or after it happens. We try to walk in holy faith, but sometimes it feels like holy fog. We can't see. It's all foggy until we start looking backwards at the facts. We're all on a journey to get to the promised land. Jacob and Joseph asked that their bodies be taken back to Canaan. Why? Because Egypt was not their home. They want to go to Canaan. If you had good parents, do you now want to occasionally, when you're having a bad day, return to your childhood home if it was a good home? I do. I'll sneak off to North Georgia occasionally. Get away. Think about the good old days. They weren't really that good. But there's something about home that drives you. We're trying to understand our journey. We're trying to journey to our Canaan land. Currently, we're in the land of Goshen. We're waiting for God to take us to Canaan. When we go, we won't cross the Red Sea. We'll cross their galaxies. But we're still on our journey now. At the end of this story, when Joseph assured his brothers that they would be safe, Jesus was standing in the room saying, salvation has come to this house. Salvation to this house. Well, Genesis has been a long story, but it is a tremendous book. And I hope it's been as much of a positive experience to you as it has been for me. I thank you for being here this morning. Doug will be teaching again next week. Go ahead.
Ken,
Sorry.
we have a special prayer request. Rob just told me about the fact that his department has lost 3 individuals in the last week. And so he has requested that we pray.
Okay. You have one prayer.
Oh, sure. God, I thank you so much that you have given us this example of Joseph, who's walked through deep doo-doo and still has the heart to forgive, and that can trust in the fact that you are leading every detail of his life. Today I want to remember Rob and all his department. They bend over backwards to serve us. And as a department, they are hurting deeply. I pray for their families, for all the losses that they have endured. May you, as a God of comfort, be there, strengthening them, and help them to have a sense of your presence, guiding them through this difficult process. And we thank you in Jesus' name.
Thank you for coming.